The Middle East, a land of breathtaking beauty and ancient history, a cradle of civilization where prophets walked, empires rose and faiths were born. But in June 2025, the world's eyes are not drawn here for its beauty, but for its breaking point. At the center of this growing storm are two nations, Iran and Israel, two powers whose enmity now threatens to pull an entire region and possibly the world into conflict. To understand the present, we must first understand the past. The hostility between Iran and Israel is not born of border disputes or recent disagreements. It is rooted in decades of mistrust, ideology, and regional ambition. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran's leaders have positioned themselves as the defenders of oppressed Muslims and the sworn opponents of Zionism. Israel, meanwhile, views Iran as the greatest threat to its survival, a country that not only denies its right to exist, but actively arms those who seek to destroy it. Over the years, their rivalry has played out through proxy wars, cyber attacks, sabotage operations, assassinations, and covert missions. But now, in 2025, the gloves appear to be coming off. In the last 6 months, a dramatic escalation has unfolded. Israeli jets struck a suspected weapons facility near Isfahan, deep inside Iran. Iran retaliated through its allies, launching a barrage of drone and missile attacks from Syria and Iraq. Skirmishes on the Lebanese border have turned into regular exchanges of fire. Civilians on both sides live under the constant threat of attack. Shelters in Haifa and Ashkelon are filling nightly. Tehran, meanwhile, has placed its air defense systems on high alert. This is no longer a shadow war. This is a visible, active confrontation on the brink of full-scale war. At the center of this conflict lies a terrifying question. Will Iran build a nuclear weapon? The international nuclear deal, known as the JCPOA, once promised a path to peace. In exchange for lifting sanctions, Iran agreed to limit its uranium enrichment, but the deal has collapsed. The United States withdrew years ago, and attempts to revive it have failed. Today, Iran's enrichment levels have reportedly passed 90% near weapons grade. Inspectors have been denied access to key sites. The clock is ticking. Israel has made its position crystal clear. It will not allow a nuclear-armed Iran, and it is prepared to act alone if the world won't. Prime Minister Daniel Rahamim stated bluntly, "We will not wait for the mushroom cloud." Israeli military leaders have been preparing for a large-scale operation for months, and recent exercises simulate deep strike missions into Iranian territory. Iran, on the other hand, sees itself under siege, surrounded by American bases, facing decades of sanctions and constantly threatened with attack. Tehran claims its nuclear program is peaceful and justified. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has framed Israel's attacks as acts of war and vowed decisive retaliation if Iranian soil is struck again. But beyond the rhetoric, it is the people who suffer the most. In Israel, daily life has changed. School children in the north learn emergency drills alongside math and history. Weddings are postponed. Business is down. The memory of past wars in 2006, 2014, and 2021 still lingers. In Iran, the weight is heavier still. The economy is suffocating under sanctions. Power shortages are common. Young Iranians, already crushed by inflation and unemployment, now face the reality of war. Yet in both nations, something extraordinary persists: hope. In quiet corners, on encrypted apps, in whispered conversations in cafes and classrooms, there are Iranians and Israelis who reject the cycle of hate. They dream of another path. Musicians collaborate online, scholars exchange ideas. Activists speak of a future beyond war. But these voices are small, and they are often silenced by fear, by censorship, or by the booming drums of nationalism. The regional implications of this conflict are vast and terrifying. Hezbollah in Lebanon holds an arsenal of over 150,000 rockets, many supplied by Iran. A war between Iran and Israel would unleash them on Israeli cities. The IDF, in turn, would flatten southern Lebanon. Syria, already fractured by civil war, could become a launchpad for both sides. Iraq, torn between Iranian influence and Western alliances, may again become a battleground. Even Yemen, via the Iran-backed Houthis, has launched missiles toward Israel's southern port of Eilat in recent weeks. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, once quiet rivals of Israel, have drawn closer in a shared fear of Iran. The Abraham Accords, signed years ago, are now being tested not in boardrooms but on battlefields. Gulf air defenses, many manned by American troops, have already intercepted multiple drones launched by Iranian proxies. And what of the world? The United States, Israel's closest ally, is walking a diplomatic tightrope. A direct confrontation risks dragging American forces into war. Congress is divided. Europe, haunted by its own conflicts and dependent on Middle Eastern energy, calls for de-escalation but offers little else. Russia, weakened by its entanglements in Eastern Europe, remains a wild card. China, Iran's strategic partner, urges calm but quietly trades technology and weapons with Tehran. The cyber battlefield has become equally dangerous. In recent months, Israeli hospitals, banks, and transportation systems have come under cyber attack. Iran's nuclear facilities have faced similar assaults. Experts warn that a full-blown cyber war could cripple infrastructure across the region and beyond, affecting energy grids, water supplies, and even airline safety. Social media, once a space for dialogue and exchange, is now flooded with propaganda, deepfakes, and coordinated disinformation campaigns. Every explosion is filmed, every speech dissected. The world watches through shaky smartphone footage and viral hashtags. But what it doesn't see is the growing trauma in the eyes of those who live beneath the smoke. So, the question now is not whether war is possible. It's whether it is avoidable. Some analysts say it's already begun, a slow-motion war, piece by piece. Others argue that deterrence will hold, that neither side truly wants a large-scale conflict. But wars are not always chosen. They are often accidents. A misjudged airstrike, a drone in the wrong airspace, a political leader needing a distraction. History is filled with moments where diplomacy failed, not because peace was impossible, but because it was inconvenient. But peace is still possible if the world chooses it. If the international community prioritizes negotiation over escalation, if regional powers stop feeding proxy fires and start building coalitions for coexistence, and if the people of Iran and Israel, brave and weary, continue to speak out not in hatred but in hope. Because in the end, this is not a story of good versus evil. It is a story of fear versus trust, of power versus vulnerability, of two ancient peoples who have far more in common than they are allowed to believe. This is the story of Iran and Israel in 2025, and it is being written right now. The world must decide how this chapter ends. Will it be written in smoke and blood, or in courage and reconciliation? The choice, though difficult, remains ours.